Welcome back. So in this lesson, we're going to be going over loops. In the previous lesson, whenever we wanted to have code repeat, I just copied and pasted that code. But we're going to learn a much better way to do that in this lesson. So let me show you a little demo where I am changing properties repeatedly. Okay, so over here, you can see that I am changing the color on this sphere. And then over here, you can see that I am changing, I'm actually turning a spotlight or a point light on and off repeatedly. And then I've also done a few other things here, and let me show you. So on this one, we have a bridge that fades in and out, and you have to make it across before it fades. Here, I've attached a motor to some platforms, and you can see that the direction actually changes every few seconds. Here, let's just keep watching. You can see it. It stops, and then it goes the other direction. Okay. And let me see if I can make it across without dying. There it goes. Okay, so I actually made it. And then this last one, I tried to get a little creative. And here we have steps that fade in and out, and you have to make your way across before they disappear. So let me see if I can make it across. And these are just examples of what you can do with changing properties and a little bit of a loop. I'm probably not gonna make it. Let's see. I did make it. Okay. Anyway, just some examples of what we can do here. And again, kind of sticking with the theme of an obby and what kind of obstacles you could make. Okay. So let's get to the problem that we have here. So let me show you what I did currently, and then we'll improve the code that we use. So let's take this first one, which is a sphere whose color is changed. Now, if we take a look at the script that's attached, you'll see that I did this, what's called in the brute force method. And basically I just copied and pasted the code so that it would do it over and over. And you could do this. You could keep copying and pasting and have thousands of lines of the exact same code, and it would work. It would work. But this is definitely not the way that you want to code. First of all, what if you wanted it to do something different? Well, you'd have to go through here and change all of these, okay, which would be a lot of work. Or, I mean, this is a simple example, but what if you misspelled something? You know, what if you put in two N's and then you copied and pasted that whole thing? You'd have to go back and fix that error in all of your code. So this is definitely not the way that you want to do this. So how would we do this? Well, let's, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and modify this one. So let me get rid of all of the extras that I put in here first. Let me delete them. Okay. And now all we have are two lines of code. Okay. And what we want is for these two lines, the wait for 1 second and then the change in color to be repeated over and over and over again. And so how do we do that? How do we repeat code? Well, Lua, the programming language that Roblox uses, provides us with a tool for doing that, and it is called a loop. Okay, and how do we use a loop? Well, there are actually a few different kinds of loops. We're going to use the simplest one, which is called a while loop. And here's how you type that in. So you do while true do, and then I just hit enter, and it will autocomplete the rest of it. It'll put a little end and give me a little space in between. Now, anything in here in between do and end is going to be repeated over and over again. Okay, so let's try a few different things. Let's go ahead and put this inside of there. So one thing you can do in order to move lines of code is to use Alt and the up and down arrows. If you hold down the Alt key and move the down arrow, it'll move the lines up and down. And this is very useful. So hold down Alt and use the up and down keys to move your code around. And I use this all the time. I'm just going to put a couple of tabs in here to make it look better. And now you see that between do and between end, we have our two lines of code. We have this. We have a wait statement, a wait for 1 second, and then we have a change in color line. Now, these two are going to be repeated over and over again forever, as long as the game is running. Okay, so let's test this. Let's see if it works. Okay, so let's go ahead and push play and see if our sphere keeps changing color. And it is. I can see it from here. Okay, so our sphere is changing color every second. Okay, let's go ahead and stop this. And we can do anything we want in here. We can have it repeat over and over again. Now, here's an important point. Let's say that I had not put in a wait statement. Let me get rid of that. Okay, and now I just have it changing color. This is really bad. This will either crash Roblox or it will crash your computer. Okay, because what you're telling Roblox to do is to change the color without any kind of wait statement, without any kind of delay. And so it's going to try and change the color as quickly as it can. It'll change it thousands of times per second. Unfortunately, this will cause Roblox to crash. So anytime you use a while loop, you always have to have a wait statement. And it can be a really short statement, or a really short wait time. It could be 0.1 seconds or something small. But you definitely always want to have a wait inside of your while loop, or you will crash Roblox or your computer. Okay. So let's change some other stuff. So we changed the color. What else can we change? Well, we could change, let's see, what else can we change on our sphere? Let's take a look at it. Okay. So if we look at the sphere, we could change the color, which we're already doing. We could turn the shadows on and off. We can change the transparency. We can make this thing disappear. We could anchor this. You know what? I think I'm going to change let's change the material, or let's see. Yeah, let's go ahead and change the material. Now remember, if you want to change the material, it's a list. That material is a list, but another name for that list is enum. So we want to do enum. It's just a list of stuff. And when you do the dot, you see all the different lists that we have. And a lot of these I'm never going to use, but the material one is very useful. Okay. And then when you do the dot, we can change this material to whatever we want. So let's do, I don't know, let's do wood. Okay. Now, this is going to change the material every time to wood. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a random material. Let me check and see, actually. That'd be great if there was a random one. Yeah, I doubt that there is. Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a random material. So we have to actually change these. But let's just do a couple of these. So we're going to change it from, I don't know, plastic. And then we're going to do this again. So we are going to copy and paste here one time, just because there isn't a way to change the material randomly. So I'm going to copy this. And then I'm going to paste it. Okay. And I'll change the material back to something like cobblestone. Okay. So we're going to go back and forth. We're going to go back and forth between plastic and cobblestone on here. Okay. But again, I'm not copying and pasting this entire thing. I'm just doing it once. I'm changing to plastic, changing to cobblestone. The loop is running again, changing to plastic, changing to cobblestone. So let's go ahead and see if that works. So let's push play. And then this is doing this every second. So let's make sure, let's see, and it should be changing material and color. And it is, you can see that it's going from a smooth material to the cobblestone material, and with different colors every time. Okay, so let's keep changing stuff. Okay. All right, so what else can we change? Well, let's go in here. Whoops. Let's change the shape. You can actually change the shape on this. And if you look in the property window for shape, it's all the way at the bottom, I think. Let me see, where is it? Yeah, here it is. And it's also a drop-down list. And because it's a drop-down list, you know that we're gonna have to use an enum. So let's go ahead and use, and I think this is the way you do it. Let me make sure. Oh, actually, you know what? I think shape is actually a different kind of thing. Actually, you know what? I did this before, so let me see. Actually, you know what? We'll skip that one for now. I'll come back to that. I forgot. I think that's a different kind of enum, actually. But let's see, what else can we do? So we changed the color. We changed the material. Let's change, let's see. Let's do, oh, you know one thing we can do? We can anchor it and unanchor it. So let's do script.parent.anchored, and let's turn it off. Let's make sure it's not anchored, and then let's turn it back on. So every second, it's gonna switch from being anchored to unanchored. Okay, let's try that. And now this thing should move and then not move. Unfortunately, I think when I move it, I'm going to knock it off the platform, but let's see if I can get it to change a couple of times before I move it off. So if I bump into this, it might move. Let me see, there it goes. Okay, it's gonna stop. Stop. That's funny, it actually remembers the speed that it was going at before. Let me try that again, actually. I didn't know it would do that, to be honest. Okay, so let's go back. And you can see it drop actually a little bit. Actually, let me show you that. Let me raise it up a bit so you can see it drop. Let me move that up just a little bit. There we go. Put it up in the sky a little bit. Okay, now watch what happens to it when it first turns on. Yeah, you can see that it drops a little bit right there. And again, I don't know why it does that, but when you bump into it, it doesn't do anything, and then it'll start to move, and then it stops, and then starts to move. And the whole time it's changing color and material as well. Okay. So just a few examples. You can change anything in here, and I'm gonna get rid of some of this stuff. We don't really need all this. But you can change anything in here, and the while loop will just repeat it over and over again. So no need to copy and paste. And there's a bunch of advantages to this, right? You only have 1 or 2 lines of code here. If you were to make a mistake, you could just change that mistake really easily. Or say that you wanted to do something differently, right? Say that you didn't want to change the color. Say that you wanted to change, you know, the shape or something, or the material. Right? You could just do it one time. You wouldn't have to type this out everywhere. Okay, let me just undo this. Okay. Oh, also really useful thing. There's a undo button up here, but there's a keyboard shortcut for it. So you can do this. And once you undo, you can redo using this, but you can also do Control-Z, and it will undo whatever you just did. So basically it goes back one step. Okay, so here we have a loop, and what we did was we used that loop to change a few properties on one object. Okay, so let's do this same thing, but with our light. Okay, so if we go, let me go ahead and go over to the light. Okay, so we have a bulb over here. Let me just move my camera. Okay, we have a bulb, and attached to that bulb is a point light. Okay, And then attached to that point light is a script, which I've called script light. And if I look inside of script light, you'll see that right now I'm doing the same thing as before. I'm using a lot of copying and pasting in order to get my effect to work. So let me go ahead and remove everything except for these first 4 lines. Okay, and again, remember what we want to do is, for this effect at least, we want to wait 1 second, then we want to turn the light on, wait 1 second, then turn the light effect off, okay? So we want a while loop again, so while true, and after you type true, you can just hit enter and it'll auto-complete the rest of it. And then we want to go ahead and move all of these down. So I do Alt, down arrow, and then I wonder if I can hit tab. Let me see. Oh, it does let me do it. Okay, so you can actually tab the entire, all 4 lines at once if you have them all selected. Okay, so now I've got my while loop and I'm turning the effect on and off. So let's make sure this works. Go ahead and push play. And let's go over, and you can see it's working off in the distance, but let me move my little guy over there. And you know what? This time I think did I use a point light on this? Hold on, let me see. Oh, I did. Okay. Because I used a point light instead of I don't know if it would work with a spotlight as well, but it glows anyway once I have this point light on there, so I don't actually have to change the material this time. Okay, so it works really well. You could also change the color on this, right? Let's try that. Let's try changing the color on the light. So we're gonna do script.parent. Oh, you know what? The only thing is, I wonder if that has a, oh, it doesn't have a brick color. It actually has a color. Nah, you know what? We'll skip that. We'll get to that later where there's different ways to change colors. And I just like doing brick color because it's easy, but there are other ways, but they involve a bit of explanation. So we'll leave that for later. Okay, so let's see what else I did in this demo. So if I go over here, you can see that I have a fade bridge, and then I have this motor to which I have attached a bunch of pads, and they are rotating and then changing direction. And let's actually do that one because that one's actually not very hard. Okay, so let me go over here and let me put one. So remember, we created a motor in a previous lesson, and you should have saved that to your toolbox. But if you didn't, you can always just go into my what do you call it? The objects that I've saved. If you click on these little 3 lines and you type in my name for creator, whoops, Cisco in Texas, you can click on me and it'll show you all of the different things I've made, and you have to do models. Oh, I guess I have to do models first. Hold on. And this is, oh, I guess I have made all this stuff. Okay, so this is all the stuff I've made, but if you scroll down, there should be a motor here. There it is. And this is just my little motor that I've made. And I'm just gonna drag it over here. Okay, let me close that toolbox. And we want to rotate this motor so that it is pointing up. Okay, and let's see. Let me see how close it is because I don't want this bumping into my spawn location. Let me move this a little bit. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to attach objects to this motor so that they will rotate. So let me just attach a couple of objects real quick. Let's insert, let's do some spheres. Okay, and I'm gonna just look at this from the top. Let me just press the top thing here and then move over. Okay, and let me change the color on this. Okay, and let me move Okay, and I'm just gonna put a few of these on there. So I'm gonna make copies of these, and let me turn off collisions so I can place them in the same place. So let me duplicate. I'm gonna move this one over. Looks about right. Okay, and now here's a little trick for making copies. You can choose more than one. So I'm gonna hit Control and select both of these. Now you can see both of these spheres are selected. And I'm gonna make a copy with collisions off. And I'm gonna rotate it. And this will actually let me rotate them perfectly. So they're nice and symmetric. Okay, so I've done 4, and you can keep doing this, right? So let me say I wanted to do 4 of these. So let me select the other 2. So Control and Control left click. And now I've selected all 4 of these. I can make a copy again, duplicate, and rotate. And I should be able to have 8 of these perfectly centered. That looks great. Okay, so now I've got 4 cylinders, but what I want to do is I want to attach these to my motor. So I'm going to weld them. Remember, go into the model menu, and I'm going to go ahead and create welds between my moving motor part and each of these. Just going to do this over and over again. Yeah, I don't think there's an easier way to do this. But this isn't too hard. Just click, create weld, attach your 2 pieces. Doesn't take... Oh, you know, I could have saved some time if I had created the welds before I duplicated. Then the welds would have been duplicated as well. But it's not that much more work. Okay, all 8 of my spheres are attached to this rotor. So let me go ahead and let's make sure this works. So let me see. These spheres are not anchored. Okay, let's make sure this works. Push play. And they do. And I should be able to jump on these. I don't know if I can. Let's see. I can. All right, so we've built a bunch of spheres that are basically just spinning around by attaching them to our motor. Okay. Now what I want to do though is I want to change the direction that these spheres are spinning in. So right now, let me see what direction they're moving in right now. Right now they're just moving counterclockwise this way. Okay, but I want them to switch. And you can imagine, like, if you were actually making a game, you might want to do this to make it more challenging, right? If they switch directions every once in a while, it would make it a more difficult obstacle. But how do we do this? Well, let's go ahead and see what we've got. We've got, let me go in here. Let me close this. Okay. Now in our motor, we have 2 pieces, right? We have the motor engine, which has the hinge constraint, and we have the motor spindle, right? And we want to actually change properties on this hinge constraint, because if you click on the hinge constraint and go into the properties, you'll notice down here there's an angular velocity, and that is actually how fast this motor spins. But not only that, you can change directions by putting in a negative sign. Okay, and so we want to change the angular velocity property on this hinge constraint. And so I'm going to attach a script right here. And just start typing script, and it'll give you the option. Click on it. And now I have a script, and I'm going to call this script motor. Okay, let me get rid of this print statement. And let me get rid of the other 2 that I had just to clean this up. Okay, so what do we want to do? Well, we definitely want a while loop, right? So while true, enter. Okay, and what do we want this to do though? Okay, well, we know that it's the parent of our script, the hinge constraint. So we know we need script.parent. And then what do we want to change? And if you put the dot immediately, you see that the angular velocity is there. So let's change that. So we're going to say script.parent.angular velocity equals, and normally I think I start off with, if you look at the hinge constraint properties, I started off at 0.25. So I want it to go in the other direction. So I'm going to say minus 0.25. And don't forget, we need to have a wait. So I'm going to wait, I don't know, 5 seconds. Then I'm going to wait 5 seconds again. And I'm going to change the direction again. And we need 2 of these, right? Because we want it to change direction twice. So I'm going to change it back to 0.25. And that's it. So now the velocity is going to change to a minus 0.25, wait 5 seconds, and then change back to a positive. So it's going to change directions basically just because of this little minus sign. Okay. So let's go ahead and test it and let's see if it works. I don't think I forgot anything. Okay, let's see. Let's see if this works. Okay, remember it takes 5 seconds. So, oh, and it did it. So now it's going clockwise. And then it should change in 5 seconds and it changed back. So you can see me moving in one direction, and then 5 seconds later, I move in another direction. And then 5 seconds later, I move back. Okay, so a more interesting obby created using a simple while loop. And my computer's stuttering. I don't know why. One other thing I would do, remember, is just to make this transparent. So I would actually get rid of the, I would make the transparency 1 for both the motor engine and the motor spindle. And I would actually also make it so that you couldn't land on them. So on the motor engine, there's actually a property called can collide. Oh, it's already off. This means you can pass through it, and it should be off for both of those. Let me see. Yeah, can collide is off for both of those. Okay, and can collide just means you can pass right through it. Even if it's invisible, even if the transparency is 1, you can still like stand on it, right? So, but if you take the can collide property and turn it off, you'll pass right through. So it's really not only invisible, but you can also pass through it. Okay, and then if I push play, this looks a lot better. And yeah, that actually looks really nice. So we have a obby obstacle that changes direction every 5 seconds. And it's hard to see there. Let me get over here. There you go. It's a better camera angle. And there actually is a way to make this random, right? So right now I'm changing the time it takes to change directions. It's consistent, right? It's only 5 seconds every time. But you can actually make that a random number, and that is something you can do. Okay, last thing I do in this demo, if we look, is this. Actually, I should have just gone over there. Okay, here's the last thing that I do. So if you look here, I have my fade bridge. How do I do this? How do I make a bridge that fades as you go across? And again, if you're on this, when it disappears, you fall through. How do you make something like that? Well, we're going to do it with a loop. So let me go ahead and combine all of this stuff and move it to the side. So I'm going to select all of this using Control left click. And you can do this over here in the Explorer window. And I'm just going to select all of these parts, and then I'm going to group them just to make it nice and compact. There we go. And I'm going to call it, I don't know, spinning spheres, spin spheres. Okay. So that's there. And now I can move this, and let's move this off to the side. Okay. So what I want to do, actually, let me move that. Let me move that over a ways. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to make a platform that fades out and then lets you fall through. So first thing we need is a platform. And let's just do this with one, and then you'll see it's pretty easy to do this with others or with more than one. So let's go ahead and add a block. And let me stretch it. Oh, let me turn collisions back on. Let me stretch it to where it's about the size of this. There we go. And that's actually a good size. Okay. Now we have a platform. Let me make sure to anchor it. And I'm going to call this, I don't know, let's call it step. I'm going to attach a script to it. I'm going to call it script step. Okay, let me get rid of this print statement. And now, well, we know we want to do something repeated. So let's just start off with our, oh, whoops. Is that supposed to be capitalized? No. Yeah, honestly, on these, this is a lowercase w. An uppercase w probably wouldn't work. Okay, so now we have our while loop. And we want to put some stuff in here. And so what do we want to do? Let me get rid of this. Well, we want this to fade out, right? We want this to fade out over time. But let's start simple. Okay, so let's say that we wanted it to fade out repeatedly. So let's just do that. So we're going to say script dot parent dot transparency equals, let's see. So if it's 1, it's invisible. If it's 0, it's fully visible. So we're going to go to 1. And let's put in our wait statement. Let's make it wait, I don't know, 2 seconds. And then we're going to wait 2 seconds and then make it go back. So we're just going to start simple. Okay, so let's see if this works. So we're going to push play and see if this let's see if this does what we want. Oh, did I forget to anchor it? No, I didn't. Okay, so every 2 seconds, this is disappearing. But let me show you what I was talking about with the can collide. So even though this thing is invisible, watch, I'm going to be able to walk right over it. Yeah, see, even though it's invisible, the can collide property is still on, so I can still walk on it. Okay, so we'll have to get rid of that eventually. Actually, we'll get rid of it now. So when it's invisible, which is right here, we want the can collide property to be false. And then when it's visible, we want the can collide property to be true. Okay, let's test that. Okay, so now whenever the platform is visible, you should be able to stand on it. And whenever it's not visible, you should fall through. Let's make sure that works. So let me see if I can time this. On, off, worked. Now I'm going to stay on it this time and I should fall right through. Yep, that works. Great. So we're doing 2 things, right? We're making it invisible, but we're also making it so you can pass through. Okay. Now, the way it is right now, it's just visible or invisible. What we want it to do is do this in steps. Okay. So we don't want it to go to 1 immediately. We want it to go to 1 in a bunch of steps. And there's actually a better way to do this. It's called a for loop, but I'll show you that later. Let's do the hard way first, and then when we learn the for loop, you'll appreciate how much better it is. So we're just gonna copy this. So I'm gonna say copy, and I'm gonna paste it underneath. And let me put some space in here too, just to make it better. Okay. Now I don't want to go immediately to 1. So let's say that I start with, I don't know, 0.5. So now I've got 2 steps. Okay. So now it's going to go 0.5, then 1, and then back to 0. And really, we could even put this up here. Let me see. What's the better way to do it? So when it's 0, it's fully visible. Yeah, let's move this to the top, actually. There we go. Get a little space in there. Okay, so now it starts at 0, goes to, oh, and we don't want this part here. Let me see. We want this one. Hold on, just making sure everything's right. We don't need 3 can collide statements, so let me see which one we can get rid of. We want you to be able to step on it when it's visible, and we want to fall through when it's invisible, so we don't really need this one. Yeah, there we go. Okay, let's see what this does. And, to be honest, if I was making this, I would just start coding and testing, and if it didn't work, I'd go back and change whatever I had coded. Let's see. Okay, so now, and it does it in steps. See? Now it doesn't just visible or invisible. There's actually an in-between step where it gets slightly transparent. And if I'm on it, It should still stay. And then as soon as it's invisible, I fall through. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. The only thing is that we really need more steps. So we have to make copies of this. And again, a for loop would let us do this without typing so much. But just for practice, we're going to do it this way. So let me put one in here and let's make it 0.25. Okay, and let's add another one. Let's do another one here. And let's make it 0.75. So we're going from 0, 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, and then 0.1. So this is 5 steps, and it'll look okay. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm gonna go over here, and you're gonna see that it's gonna start to fade little by little. Okay, fading little by little, and then it's gone. Comes back, fades little by little, and then it's gone and I fall through. And you could keep doing this, right? You could keep adding to this. So let me make a few more and you can see this is gonna start to get ugly, but let me copy this, copy and paste it underneath. And I'm gonna have to change the numbers. Okay, so let me make this smaller. You do Control scroll wheel and it'll let you change this text to be larger or smaller. Okay, and so we want to go through this in steps. So let's do, I don't know, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0. Let's add a few more of these. Let's do it in 10. So let's say 0.1, 0.2, and I'll add a few more. 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, and let's add a few more so I can get all the way back to 1. So let's add a few more of these. So copy and then paste. And you can also use the keyboard shortcuts, Control C, Control V. I'm just going to do that here. Let me see, 7, I think I need one more. Okay, so that one's going to be 9, that one's going to be 8, that one's going to be 7. Okay, so now let me make this small so you can see all of it. It's still not small enough. There it is. Okay, well, okay, so I'm going from 0, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, all the way to 1, and I have a can collide true at the beginning and a can collide false at the end. Okay, so now this should look pretty smooth. You'd actually have to make these even smaller for it to look really smooth, but this should be good enough. Let's see. And you'll see, yeah, it's going slowly. Actually, it's going too slow. So let's make these all 1s. So instead of wait for 2 seconds, I'm going to wait for 1 second. And this should take a little bit of time, a little less time, because right now it's too slow. Now this will only take around 10 seconds. Okay, let's try this. You know, that doesn't look bad. It's not as smooth as my other one. On my other one, I think I went, instead of 0.1 every time, I did like 0.05. So there was like 20 of these. But again, a for loop is a much better way to do this. There's still too much typing. So we don't have to like copy this whole thing over and over again, but we're still typing way too much. And that's why we need a for loop. A for loop basically lets you repeat things while you increase something a little bit each time. And we'll see that later. But this works, okay? So we have a while loop that changes the transparency slowly on this thing. And let me change this again. Let me make it 0.2. That way this goes a lot faster. But basically, we're changing the transparency a little bit at a time to get this effect that the platform is disappearing slowly. Or that it's fading. Now, one of these I do want to leave a little longer. Let me see. This one at the top, actually, I want there to be a little bit of a break. So when its can collide is turned off, I want there to be a little bit of a break, maybe 2 seconds before it starts fading again. Okay. So let's test this. This should look a lot better. This should only take about 2 seconds. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. And you can see, okay, it fades out and there's a little break and then it comes back. And if you get off, and this I'm going to fall through. So as it goes, then you fall through. And that is it. Now I did a bunch of these. I made copies of these in order to make the effect that I have over here. Let me show you that again. But this is basically how I made this fade bridge. And you can see the fade bridge looks a lot smoother because I used a smaller time and I made the differences in the transparency smaller. But actually here you can even see the steps. But it looks good. Okay, and those are all of the effects that I made using just this while loop and changing some of the properties. And I made something, pretty complicated using just that, where you've got all of these platforms that I put in this kind of puzzle arrangement, and I have the transparency and the can collide properties changing over time. Okay, so that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll actually go over, because when you're doing coding, what you really want to get to is events. Events are the fun thing with coding, especially in games. But in order to get to events, which is the really fun part, you have to learn something called a function. And so in the next lesson, we'll talk about functions, and then we'll be ready to spend some time on events. So I'll see you then.